United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, we're going to start off with getting an introduction of new teachers. Any principal have a preference?
I actually brought this up as a prop, so I can introduce my first teacher. I'm going to introduce, and actually, Ken, could you please stand up? He's got great taste, doesn't he?
Can the teachers just come forward,
Sure.
perhaps, so the board can at least see it?
Well, maybe not those.
Thank you. It's a little bit difficult.
I'd like to introduce Ken Oakes. This is the sheet that we used at our our convocation day. Ken Oakes is working as a lineman special education teacher. So his background, Fordham University in New York, with a BS in neuroscience. Attended CCSU for his MS in special education. He likes espresso, so I stopped and got something so I could match his energy and enthusiasm. He wrote down that he dislikes decaf. This is not decaf. Okay. His favorite vacation was Cape Cod, and other things. Years living in New York, I can use the subway, but I still cannot parallel park a car. We're very happy to have Ken in the special education department at Lebanon.
Thank you. Welcome.
You come on down. Okay. This is Baird. He does not have one. We'll create one. His background, he lives in Waterford. He went to Connecticut College, and he has a BA in government. He likes canoe trips, camping, dislikes muggy weather, and until the air conditioning was fixed, he had to deal with it. Favorite vacation was his family college in Unity, Maine, and he wrote down other things he'd like to share. He is very happy to be here. Okay. It's now my pleasure to introduce Jordan Trahan. Jordan was actually here at 7 o'clock, and she didn't even go home. She just went right from the high school here. So, Jordan is a math teacher at Lyman, 3 periods, and then a math interventionist here at Lebanon Middle School. Her background started as a psychology major. Her first job was a substitute, loved it, and went back to school. She wrote about her family. It's important to her. She has one sister, parents are together, has a boyfriend of 5.5 years. Likes and dislikes, loves to read and do crafts. Her favorite vacation was a semester in Ireland, and she's obsessed with all things Irish. Okay? And she'd like the last person I'll introduce is Kristen Franson. Kristen is our new high school nurse, and she's very familiar to all of us in the district because she was our substitute nurse here. She was, whenever one of the nurses in district was out, she was in. So she does not have a nickname either. We have to work on this. We really have to work on this. But her background, she lives in Lebanon, has 2 kids. Okay, Levi just graduated, and Shane is now in 11th grade. That is hard to believe. She likes ice cream, as do I. What's that?
It was a hot day.
It was a hot day when she wrote this, so yes. Okay. Favorite vacation was any vacation, which I agree with. She loved snorkeling in the Cayman Islands. Okay. Other things she'd like to share, she will think about it because it's blank. Okay. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone.
my pleasure to first introduce Louis Goffinet. Louis goes by Louis, so that's what we call him. Louis, I got to get used to saying that. Louis was a graduate of UConn. He has a unique background in that he originally was going to go to dental school, and for whatever reason, he realized that he preferred his time with children. He's done a lot of long-term sub experiences at Mansfield Middle School. So he changed his career path, went through the ARC program, so the alternative route program, got certified to become a teacher, and he is our long-term 8th grade science teacher. He has a very interesting background. He speaks French. His parents speak multiple languages, so it's very interesting to talk to him about his family life and his own personal life. He did the new thing, I'll call it, because it didn't happen in my day, the gap year, and hiked all through Europe. So he's got some very exciting stories that he can share with us and with the students about his experiences all through Europe. And he's an awesome addition to the middle school. And although he's 6'6", he has never played basketball. To introduce, she's not here, but we have a new band teacher, Kristen Loria. She is a Hart School graduate. She's a performer, so actually our convocation, she was performing out in California, so she has an absolute love of music. She is here and at Lyman with the band program at Lyman as well. Thank you.
Evan is our preschool AM teacher and also grades 1 through 4. He comes from a long line of family in education. In fact, his mom, Barbara Leisure, is here over 70 years in education.
Not just me.
A graduate from CCSU with a bachelor's in PE and health. Evan's a familiar face. He has served as in multiple schools as long-term substitutes. He also coaches 4 sports between Lyman and LMS. He is something interesting. He is a wiffle ball champion, I think 2-time. And he loves to go on vacations at Saratoga Springs and Lake George, listening to music or playing in the outdoors. He is already, a teacher, Ms. Brochu, started this thing last week, which is just kind of gotten contagious amongst our staff, which is like shout outs through email. And so Evan actually received the first shout out. There was a new preschool who you can imagine when they're 3, how overwhelming school can seem and big. And so he was headed to the gym for the very first time. He had asked the teacher what his likes were. They were Pete the Cat, and so he saw a poster. He posted a poster right at the front of the door, and immediately that 3-year-old felt at ease and had a great gym class. So that just sort of resonates, sort of how Evan is as a teacher and as a person, and we are grateful that he's part of our school. Caroline Thompson is also a new teacher in my building. She's in grade 2. She actually 2 years ago was at the middle school in 5th grade. So she has come back, and the grade 2 and the rest of us are excited that she is part of the elementary school now.
Okay, we were quite busy in the Department of Pupil Services over the summer, hiring staff. I'm going to start with Mary for comments. She was recently hired as a physical therapist for the system. She is primarily working at the elementary school because that is where the majority of her caseload is right now. She grew up on the South Shore of Boston, obtained a Bachelor's of Arts in Math from the College of Holy Cross. She worked on capital budgets for 4 years for 9X and then decided to go back to school and with a Bachelor of Science in Physical Therapy and a Master's in Health Science. super excited. She began her career in a rehab hospital in Richmond, Virginia, where she worked with adults with neurological, orthopedic, and cardiovascular impairments, initially as a staff therapist, and then moving up to manager of the physical therapy department. She moved to Connecticut in 2001 to be closer to home, and spent 8 years working in an outpatient physical therapy clinic in Norwich. For the past 10 years, she's been providing physical therapy services for public schools in the area, working for a company that contracted with schools. She spent several years in London and Norwich. She's also happily married with 3 teenagers. God love her. And she is very excited to be here in Lebanon, and we're super excited to have her. We also hired an occupational therapist. She can't be here this evening, Yvette Bootman. She comes to us with years of experience as a certified occupational therapy assistant, and then continued to go through school and became a licensed OT. She's worked in a couple of different public schools, and I can tell you already her insights and the suggestions that she's given in PPTs and team meetings solidifies that we made the right choice. So we're thankful to have Yvette. We hired our own full-time BCBA, Amy Anderson. She's already proven to be wonderful. She spends the majority of her time down at the elementary school as well. Her enthusiasm is infectious. She has a great collaborative nature with members of the department and the gen ed teachers as well. So that's my department.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We'll take a quick recess so we can say hi, and there's some cookies and some water over there. We already have one, but there's some cookies and water over there for everybody, and then we'll get started.
That's all the ones I have. The ones that we got emailed.
Yeah.
That's all they gave me. By the way, Jason, who's taking minutes?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know.
It was fun. That too.
It's my job. Yes, I'm following. Don't ask me for any comments. Yes. Oh, okay. Okay, so I got to list us, and I got to list Josh. And I have to list. Who else do I have to list?
And they were just at the PTA meeting.
Oh, that's exciting.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Next on the agenda is communication. Today we have letters of resignation.
So the first one we have is from Melissa Hobel, science teacher here at the middle school. She writes that she appreciates the opportunities that she's had while she's in Lebanon, and that she thanks us for the support that she's provided. But she took a job in another district right at the end of the thing. The second letter is from paraprofessional instructional assistant Stephen Starr. He writes that he is resigning from his position of IA at the middle school effective immediately, as well as coaching positions that he held, JV basketball at the high school, and middle school baseball coaching position. He appreciates the opportunity that he was given to work in the Lebanon School District for 3 years, but he is exploring other career options at this time. We have another from Laura Laidley. She wrote that to Cheryl and Rita that she has completed her graduation and her degree in education, and over the summer she worked diligently to get her license in Massachusetts, etc. And so she is leaving to pursue careers outside of state. And then the last one is from a part-time secretarial at the elementary school, and is from Patty Handy. She wrote a letter stating that she has felt for some time now that the part-time secretarial positions are the time allotted to the part-time position. It really is insufficient for the workload. And then when we added the new Raptor system, the instant background check system, that the position really became overwhelming, and that she felt she could no longer perform the duties. So she is resigning effective Friday, September 20th.
You had one more, correct?
Not at this time, although we did learn that we have one of our part-time IT technicians is being offered a job in the corporate world, actually the same company that has hired away two of our other part-time IT. So I've talked to Jason, and when we get to action items, I would like an action item added to the agenda so that we can discuss the possibility of creating a full-time IT position and maintain one part-time IT position. So it's a restructuring of the IT department. We had this conversation already when we worked on the current year budget, and then backed away from this when we had to find ways to cut a significant amount of money out of the budget request. But we feel at this time that the budget would support moving to one full-time position, one part-time. And so we could continue that discussion when we get to the action items.
Okay, thank you. While we're still doing communication, Jay, do you want to
Yes, I neglected
communicate something?
Yeah, I neglected to introduce someone, and that was only because she's been in district for 6 full years already, but is assuming a very important role within the building. I wanted everybody to know that. Samantha McCarthy here is our part-time social studies teacher, and probably way more than part-time administrator. She's putting in lots of hours. She's doing lots. Her energy and enthusiasm it's great. She's hit the ground running, and so.
All right, at this time, anybody from the public like to address the Board of Ed? No public participation? Okay, we'll move along. On to the consent agenda. What is your pleasure?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Moved by Sarah. Do I have a second? Seconded by John. Any discussion? Deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Great, we'll move along. Reports of committees. AJ.
How much time do I have?
Well, if there are action items later on, just mention them quick.
Okay.
Okay.
We actually had two subcommittee meetings. The first one was on September 5th. I'll just give you a brief synopsis of what we covered. Adam in the selection process of the actual ZRAC application, which in the third round we were selected for a smaller scale project, a medium-sized project. We originally had put in for a large project. I was informed that there was a $15,000 down payment made. We'll be covering that later, so we'll skip over that as well. That's part of the power purchase agreement. The Green Skies will cover the cost of that. There was some discussion moving forward, which we'll get to later as well in regards to the process and actual moving on of whether we will have the construction moving forward of the actual solar panels.
We won't be covering that tonight.
No. Okay. Strike that from the record. We also were able to cover and discuss the SIP projects, whether we were going to try and switch to propane or not, replace the oil tank. I know originally it was presented for $160,000. We'll also be covering this later tonight as far as what was proposed to the Board of Finance, as well as an additional $75,000 to replace an oil tank for a total of $213,000. The meeting we had tonight for the review of the pickup truck for the maintenance vehicle, it's a total of $38,357 was recommended. Columbia Ford was a low bidder. And there was additional items that we proposed to add, which was a backup camera as well as the utility body, which was the total amount of $38,357. Also, Kevin informed us of emergency repairs for the sinkhole behind the middle school, which included new pipes. And there's also new booster pumps that need to be put in down at the elementary school, which the work was authorized by Bob to be completed. And new well pumps for the alarm at the high school. As many of you are aware, there was an issue this past week where last week where school was let out early. So moving forward, that'll be something that we'll be covering. The ASTI lab project here, we covered cost. Bob got some estimates from Brandon Hanfield. In regards to that, $16,000 to $20,000 was the actuarial and labor, and there's existing $10,000 left in the ASTI grant. We're planning to do a walkthrough and also discuss further how the ASTI money should be spent, because it's supposed to be spent within the fiscal year. Last item of discussion was additional SIP funds, which we had covered previously, and we were trying to move that back to the Board of Finance for the total of the $213,000. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, AJ. Bill?
I'll hold off on the finance until the finance report section.
Okay. Maureen?
We did meet, and you have our minutes in your packet. We will be presenting first and second readings.
All right. Thank you. Sarah? John?
We met briefly today, and we discussed this upcoming year's evaluation process. Because we implemented it a little bit later last year, we didn't implement both parts, which is the second part would be the goals that Bob would set. So we discussed goal setting, and Bob's going to, we're going to reconvene before the October Board of Ed meeting, and Bob will have some proposed goals for us at that point.
Great. Alexis?
The safety committee meeting did meet last week. We had representation from all schools, which I think was awesome. We also had Betsy Petrie, the first selectman, as well as Trooper Kono. And we're also there, so again, we had a full house, and I think we had some really great conversations. You'll see from the minutes that we're still working on the radios, the cameras Kevin mentioned today, waiting for the walkthrough. We tabled the policies because we were trying to get through the rest of our meeting while we were under a tornado watch, so we decided to speed things along. We did discuss which is also in the minutes, and it is an issue that the committee would like to maybe request that maybe Bob, you start investigating alternatives for the office staff, whether we hire a greeter or part-time staffing or something, especially for budgets coming through. I'm sure finance would appreciate some advance notice while they're preparing the future budgets, but it is a lot of extra work. Matt did attend. He can attest to how busy it was, so we definitely need to explore options of what we can do for that, so that's a request of the committee.
Okay.
And last but not least, negotiations are happening. They are real meetings, but they're non-meetings, I've been told, but trust me, we are attending them. We've had 2 teacher meetings and 1 admin, so they're in process, and apparently there's no minutes, so just want to let everyone know, because there were questions from the board members that are they happening, but they are happening. So that's all I got.
Have one this Friday.
Right.
Nothing more to report than what's in our minutes. We did schedule a follow-up meeting October 1st.
Okay. We had a shared services meeting with Bob Serpensky, Bill, Betsy, and Phil Johnson from Board of Finance. We did have that meeting. Was that last Thursday?
Yes.
And we are continuing to speak about putting at least at this moment, we're just speaking about a combined business department between the school and the town. I think that was the gist of the, still a work in progress. Okay. Administrators report.
So we had a very smooth opening to the school year. We started the school year with an assembly in the gymnasium that we had up here. There was a skit for the students. We had a recognition of a student for acts of kindness for last year. We introduced new staff, got the students comfortable with their new teachers, so that's how the day started. The building looked amazing. Over the summer, the custodians did a great job, but also the PTA did work this summer where they spruced up the faculty room. They painted it. They added some pictures on the walls. Right now they're going to be installing new countertops in there. They got new microwaves. They did a lot of small but really nice things for the faculty room to spruce it up. They also had 4 square installed, and the kids have been using them every day. They're going to come back in about a month when they're cured to paint the lines and the numbers on them, but the students have been using them and really enjoying the new courts. The greenhouse is up and running. We have a variety of things growing in there. The cafeteria has already used some of the vegetables that we grew in there, and we're learning as we go on. For example, I didn't think there's no bees in there, so how do I pollinate everything? So I actually had to go shake all the branches there in the summertime. I didn't know that until I started reading about it. So we're learning as we go, but we do have things growing inside and out. At some point in the fall, we're going to start a garden on the outside so that we can transfer what we grow from the inside to the outside. Overall, it's a very, very good start to the year. And just an update for the 7th grade science position that is vacant. We did do interviews. We had a great candidate that we sent forward, and that person will be interviewing with the superintendent soon. Thank you. Thank you.
So we start the same way that the middle school does. We open our doors to 370 students. We also, as Matt knows, we have an assembly where our Husky comes out and we talk about our PBS expectations. excite them and remind them about the reading and math challenge, journals to be submitted, and then finally I meet with fourth graders to talk about them being role models and special privileges they get when they follow those rules. So it was a great start. We have, as you know from the email I sent you all, we have a new sensory path, so I hope that you took a peek at that video and some of the pictures that sort of shared what's really happening our first 2 weeks in the elementary school setting is really establishing a positive classroom environment. So there's a lot of focus on growth mindset, grit, perseverance, reinforcing safety, honest, being responsible, respectful. So those are really what you're seeing in all the classrooms. They started beginning in grades 2 through 4, the assessments, just to take a quick peek at how they're doing so they can determine whether the student should qualify for our fit or intervention groups. So those are starting, but again, the focus is that positive school environment and creating a community in their classrooms. Just last but not least, upcoming exciting events. We have our reading and math challenge celebration on Friday. The teachers in grades K through 4 will receive some readers workshop training with Jen Scoggins, who's our lead. We have an instrumental night Monday night for fourth graders from 6 to 7, and our open house is September 19th from 6 to 7 as well. So we have a busy month already. We just had a PTA meeting prior to this, so already our calendar's filling up for October with a lot of exciting events. And again, I want to just reiterate what Rob said. A big thank you to our custodians, to our secretarial staff, IT, Justin, who I think you're going to be speaking of later. He was instrumental in helping getting us set up despite the shortage of that other person. Jacques, kind of everybody. So, our school, the person who did the grounds, I'm sorry, Kevin, I don't know what was their name? Jim? Yeah, I asked him to have everything set up before all my tours that week. They worked hard and they got that, so it really, really appreciate it. So, thank you.
Thank you. We had a great opening too, but I want to talk about something that we started this year, based on some feedback from students in the past. Our freshman orientation was a quicker orientation in the past, and students would get there around 9:30. Brief presentation in the auditorium. They would do a tour. They would, try out their lockers. They would find the cafeteria. They would talk about lunches, and the day would end. One of the things that we did this year was, after all that, we brought the kids outside, and we brought out all our cornhole. I don't know what you call them, cornhole sets. We had a whole stream of them lined up underneath the overhang because the Friday before, the week before school started, it had rained all morning. So we had them all out there. We had kids on the basketball courts. We had tables in the courtyard. I call it the courtyard, but right outside of the auditorium there, we had a whole bunch of tables set up. And Sam and I cooked for all of the freshmen. We did burgers and dogs. And Miss Blanchard, not Miss Blanchard anymore, Miss McKenzie, the chorus teacher, she brought out some music. Kids were sitting around talking to each other, probably, making friends on Snapchat and all those other things, but they were getting to know each other, and it was a great day.
Yeah, I'll just interject. My son started the week saying, "Oh my God, do I have to get up early Friday and go to this thing?" And he came home and he said it was awesome. He said he really had a really great time, and that's nice to hear. Because I can honestly say I was nervous with him being a freshman, and he said it was a great experience to meet kids.
And we'll probably tweak it maybe a little bit more as we go forward, but it was a great way to start. The kids were so enthusiastic, and I think we might have had maybe 5 kids not show out of all the incoming freshmen and some new students. We did not have a lot of schedules left over. It was great. The start of school, Sam and I met with all of the different classes, and we kind of went over our expectations in the auditorium for them. Talked about some new things. Sam introduced our new pass system, which if anybody has kids at the high school, they probably don't like. But one of the things that it has done, though, and a lot of feedback from staff and even from the kids to it, it's not something that's completely foreign, but it's helped us really manage the hallways. And we're keeping kids. They're in the classroom where they should be, just because some kids just don't want to take the extra time to fill out the pass. So it's keeping them in the hallways. It's had a great benefit.
There's a marked difference.
Yeah.
As an outsider.
Yeah. So that's been something really good. This Thursday, we have our open house at the high school. And we're already into our fall sports seasons. They're practicing, getting ready for their first games. If you go to the Lyman Memorial site, there is an athletics calendar on there that's linked to the CIAC calendar. So the moment, if there was a soccer game that got rained out, the makeup game gets automatically added in because we have to contact CIAC about that. So if you ever want to go do that, our school calendar's up there listing events. So if you ever have any questions on what's going on, I encourage you to check it out.
Thank you, Jay.
We've had a remarkably smooth opening from my purview for the, in the Department of Pupil Services. I want to give a shout out to Kevin, because we had to do a lot of work with installing air conditioners for some of our kiddos down at the elementary school, and that was done successfully, so thank you for that. I'm going to say thank you to the 3 building principals, because I really can't do my job without them, because they are my conduits of communication regarding the needs of the kids across the district. So that's where I want to start. I've had department meetings in 2 out of the 3 buildings so far, and my staffs at the middle school and the high school are reporting to me that this has been one of the smoothest openings that we have had. So I'm happy to report that. We were very busy in the summer, as you heard earlier, hiring special ed teacher, related services, paraprofessionals. We've had turnover with paraprofessionals since the school year started, so we're still in the hiring process with that. I truly appreciate the efforts of the personnel in the buildings that sit on those committees at a really busy time of year, helping us find folks to fill those positions. Also, I want to say our 3 scales classrooms in all 3 buildings are up and running and fully staffed. We just had a paraprofessional transfer. But the kids in the classrooms are doing well. They're responding to the interventions and responding to the scaffolding and tiers levels of support in those classrooms. From my purview in central office, we're already working on state reporting. We finished all of our summer reporting. Now we're moving into child count and things like that. My preliminary numbers in the department is looking like we're servicing around 184 students on IEPs, and we're at 113 on 504 accommodation plans. So it's looking like we're close to 300 that we're providing services to across the district. So, and outplacements in magnet schools. And I think that's it. I mean, I've been knocking on wood for 2 weeks because I'm like, gosh, it's been so smooth. Like, I don't know what it is, but I hope I'm not jinxing this. But thank you.
Thank you.
Had a very busy few weeks in terms of professional development and new staff orientation. So we kicked off 2 days before everybody else got back with new staff orientation. We had 10 certified staff members and or people who work in classroom settings join us for the new teacher orientation, and at that we went through everything you ever wanted to know about technology in the district, and we also covered things like and the portrait of the graduates, so kind of getting them all introduced to some of the stuff going on in the district so that they would know kind of what we were talking about when they got started. Of those folks, 6 of them are in the team program. So we have 6 first and second year teachers who we hired over the summer, and they have all been paired with their mentors, and I actually met with them yesterday to kind of get the whole team process started with them and explain to them what they're going to be doing. We also have about 15 student teachers or preclinical students coming in over the course of this year. So I've met with all of the teachers who are supporting the clinical and the student teachers, because there is a new process that student teachers have to go through called EdTPA, which is a requirement for them for their certification. And so I was getting all of the cooperating teachers up to speed on what they have to do in the classroom with the new teachers coming in for their clinicals and for student teaching. I will also be training 3 mentors from our district and 1 mentor from Sprague later on this month, so that they can pair up with teachers here who need a mentor. In terms of professional development, we had our professional development day on August 27th. We're switching off. One half of the day was EL strategies to support English language learners, and then the other half of the day was professional learning communities, and then they swapped. So one group started in the morning, and then the other group did it in the afternoon, and flip-flopped. Also on that day, we had the new intervention teacher who you met earlier tonight meet with all of our math teachers at the middle school, and we started to work out how she's going to interface with them in terms of providing intervention support for our middle school students. And they started to develop sort of a schedule and a plan for her. Try until January, and then we're going to look and see how it's working, and then if we have to make adjustments, we'll make adjustments at the mid-year point. Also, we have in-district workshops happening later this month for K through 4 in language arts. We have one happening in 5 through 8 for language arts, and we have one happening for math 5 through 8 towards the end of September and like the first week of October. The administrator and our PLEC committee will meet for the first time next Monday at 3:30 to go over the professional development day feedback forms and start planning other stuff that's going to go on this year.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for the administrators? Okay. Move along. Superintendent.
Did you want to hear from Jacques?
Yeah, Jacques, go for it.
Real quick, we rolled out the Chromebooks for the high school with the brand new ones going to 9th and 10th grade on Wednesday, and then rolled out the Chromebooks to here on Thursday. So it's been a busy couple of weeks. I do want to thank Kat. Before she left, got all the Chromebooks and sheets ready for each homeroom teacher at the high school. Jonathan's been great at the elementary school and helping out other schools. And Justin. And I did hire another IT tech part-time, Jonathan, before I lost Catherine. So we did also move everything to Windows 10. We're still actually doing, we left like busier because we wanted to do it on the teachers' machines first. So we've been doing a lot of work, making Windows 10 work with all the new software. So it's been real busy, and I'm trying to just thank also John helped a lot. He's been a great addition. Thank Kevin for that. He's helped me put in projectors and whatnot. We moved a couple rooms here, and he's been a big help.
We hooked up a couple of rooms too. Just happened one morning, right?
All right. Thank you. All right.
All right, so for the superintendent's report, AJ gave a great facilities report already, so I'm going to add a couple of things to that. As the board knows, we had several projects slated for completion during the summer. Most of them have been done, but there are a few that we were unable to get to, either because the cost became prohibitive or we were unable to secure a contractor. For instance, we had hoped to do some asbestos abatement in classrooms here at the middle school. The asbestos is in the floor tiles in the classroom. We had gone to the state bid list. There's a contractor there that can do the work for the money that we allotted for the work, but because he is priced right, he's busy. And so we were unable to get them in during the summertime. So we're going to continue to pursue that, and perhaps we can get some of that work done during school breaks. We were unable to do the resurfacing of the tennis courts. The quote that came in for that, we never even went out to bid. We asked the athletic director, Scott Elliott, had contacted a few different companies, only one of which got back to him. That person came out and took a look at the courts and wrote up a quote for repairs. If you've ever been out there, the surface is peeling in some areas, and then there are cracks in other areas, and the stanchions that hold the nets are sometimes a little crooked, etc. Right? And so he gave us a quote for the whole project to bring it back up to like new condition, and it is beyond what we've asked the board to set aside for that work. So Scott is going to look into making some minor repairs, but we do anticipate coming back with a more real quote or cost for what it would take to really put those courts back into top-notch condition. So we're going to have to come back on that. And a project that was going to be done during the summer, the irrigation, no, not the irrigation study, that is complete. It was the drainage work on the soccer field at the high school. We were unable to get anybody interested in coming out to see why the field had some drainage issues last year, but just today we are able to identify a company that will come out and do it, and so we're going to pursue that work now. So it wasn't done during the summer. Okay. Are there any questions on facilities? All right. That said, then, your first enrollment report is in your packet. There was an email from a board member following the receipt of the board packet via email, and it was asked for, can we have a look back at last year as well? So that was sent out to you via email from Chelsea. The enrollment report that is in your packet shows that the elementary school, the enrollment is 370 compared to where they ended last year at 376. The elementary school, however, does remain our largest school in terms of student population. The middle school is basically the same as it was last year. There is a decline of 2 students there, 300 at the end of last year, 298 at the start of this year. The high school is where we saw our largest drop-off. They ended the year at 343 students and are starting this year at 324, so down 19 students. You'll see the breakout by grade. The senior class was 100 kids last year, and you'll see that our freshman class currently is at 85 students. So 15 of the 19 are right there in just the change. All right, and then you have other kids that come in and out, and we end up at minus 19. Overall in the district, we're at negative 27. And our current magnet school enrollment is at 35, the same as where it was for most of last year.
Does the magnet school number include tech school?
It does not.
So where are they accounted for? Lebanon kids that go to tech schools.
So they're not in count. We don't have requirements except to provide transportation for those students.
Right. Okay. So that wasn't my question. So what I'm getting at is the magnet school number is, these are Lebanon kids that choose to go to magnet schools.
That's
here,
correct.
Right.
Yes.
Any sense of how many Lebanon kids go to tech schools?
I don't know overall. I do know that there were 20 students class that had applied and were accepted to the tech schools. The final number of enrollment, I don't know. Jay or Rob, do you know that offhand?
Some of them changed their mind over the summer, so we don't know
Yeah.
until school opens, literally.
Yeah, but we can get that number and bring it.
Do we have any financial obligation with the tech school kids?
For transportation
only.
Yeah.
Did you?
So that's grades
15
9
for
to
grade
12.
Excuse me?
That's all 4 grades.
All 4 grades at 16.
Thanks.
So it's about 15 a year.
Yeah, yeah.
Dawn?
I have a question about, like, looking at the numbers that are in the board packet and comparing, it looks like the greatest decline from, like, the freshman moving or sophomore moving to junior, it's happening in the high school. And so as I see, freshmen last year were 83, and now the sophomores this year, so the freshmen last year who are now sophomores, are 75. So we're down 12 from 9th to 10th grade, and then down 4 from 10th to 11th. So I'm wondering, but then we're up 8 from 11th moving into 12th. So I'm wondering about those numbers, if they're accurate, and why we would be. I can understand if we lost students from 8th to 9th, but 9th to 10th and 10, it doesn't make, it's not making sense in my head.
So
My answer is based on credits. So not every child who it comes in as a freshman becomes a sophomore in the following year. Some of them. And same thing on the years going forward. So their grade level in the high school is not based on their age like it is with the other schools. It's based on how many credits they've earned. So it may not be that 12 kids disappeared out of the high school. It may be that 12 kids didn't get, or some portion of 12 kids didn't get enough credits to become sophomores.
So that's part of the equation. Also, we did look into this, anticipating that there might have been a question, and in a couple of those identifying, we've had families move out of town. We've had children whose parents may live in. One parent lives in town and one parent lives in a different town, and the child has transferred from our school to the other school to live with the other parent. So there's a lot of variables at play with that.
Okay.
Alexis?
The report that came in from last year, so September of 2018, we had 990 total. In September of this year, we have 992. So I think that's where I'm questioning.
So the last year's September number was inaccurate, right? And so we had to go back because we didn't include all the students that should have been included for whatever reason, right? And so the September number, all last year, I wish we had made the correction, but all questions about the September number. But the September number had been wrong initially, right? And then it jumps, you'll see, when you go to October, because we had not included all the students that were supposed to be included. All the students are included in the current year number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else on that? No? Okay.
All right, so that's enrollment. Kathleen is going to give you a presentation on the state reporting, but before she does, I'm just going to jump in. So you met a good number of the new hires at the August meeting. All the summer hiring was not yet completed, so I'm just going to give you a couple other updates. .6 Spanish at the high school is Joanne Noasad. IAs at the elementary school, Michelle Malgett, Andrew Barber, and Danielle Brown. And as you heard earlier, we still have a science position at the middle school, and the committee at the middle school has identified a candidate for me to interview. Okay, and so that's the summer hiring update. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen. You may have read in the papers there was the state released Smarter Balance assessment scores on Monday. They were released for review to the district a little bit earlier, but they went public yesterday, and so we felt like we needed to do the presentation at this meeting. Sometimes it waits to the October meeting, but the timing of the release is such that the board should have the information now. Okay. Kathleen?
All right, so at your places, you each had a packet that kind of just gives you the basic overview for each of the grade levels for both ELA and math, and then some comparison information about the state averages and the DERG averages. And if you're curious, somebody asked last time what towns are in the DERG. The last page of the packet lists all the towns in DERG E. And actually, DERG E is the biggest DERG in terms of number of towns. There are a lot of DERG E towns. Some of them are part of regionals, so they consolidate as you get older, and so there are fewer high schools in DERG E than there are elementary aged grades. So in terms of the test scores, for third grade ELA, third grade is the first time the students take the test, so we never have any comparison data for them because they've never tested before, and with each group that comes through, you're talking about a different group of kids with different needs, so the third grade scores can fluctuate a lot over the course of multiple years because you have brand new kids taking the test as third graders each time. With that said, the third grade numbers for this year were down a little bit over the previous year's third grade, but those were different students, so you can't really make a comparison in terms of whether or not the students are making gains or losing gains because they didn't test before. And you'll see that the breakdown by the levels, we had 61 at levels 3 and 4 for ELA and 54 at levels 3 and 4 for math. And then for the previous 2 pages, it just gives you the breakdowns based on the different strands of the test. So the ELA test is broken into reading, writing, and listening. The math test is broken into concepts, problem solving, and communicating reasoning. And just so you know, the communicating reasoning scores generally tend to trend very closely to their writing scores, because if they're good writers, they tend to be good writers across the board. So, for the fourth graders, we do have information from them from the previous year. So this group of students as third graders performed a little bit better in ELA and math, but not like huge difference between what they did as third graders and fourth graders. So the scores for this group were fairly consistent over what they were in the previous year. They had 66% of them were at levels 3 and 4 in math or ELA, and 60% of them were at levels 3 and 4 in math. And then if you look, since 3 and 4 are both in the elementary school, there's a little roll up of them compared to the DERG, and you can see that our third graders for ELA are kind of right around, actually both third and fourth grade are kind of right around the DERG average. Third's a little under, fourth is a little over. The third graders generally, though, outperform the state by quite a bit. So they're definitely higher than the state for ELA. And then in terms of math, they're a little bit under the DERG average in math in both third and fourth. The math scores in third were a little bit low. They were right around the state average. The fourth grade math scores were sort of in between the DERG and the state in terms of where they fell. Any questions on the elementary school one as we're walking through this? All right, the middle school. So in ELA for grade 5, the kids in grade 5 did fairly well for ELA, and actually they did fairly well for math too. You'll see that as you look at the different category areas for ELA in fifth grade, most of the students were in the at, near, or above range for ELA, and a pretty sizable portion of them were at the at, near, and above area for math too. And so overall, 77% of them were at 3s and 4s in ELA, and 64% of them were at 3s and 4s in math. They showed improvement over their fourth grade numbers, so they were definitely scoring higher this year than they had the previous year. And if you look at them compared to they did fairly well compared to the state and the DIRG, but I'll get to that later. Sixth grade, the ELA numbers, they did really well in the listening portion. They did not do as well in terms of the reading and the writing piece of it over themselves as fifth graders. They kind of scored similar, a little bit below where they were as fifth graders, but not like tremendously below where they were as fifth graders. And in math, the scores were a little bit lower. The math scores in sixth grade were better than the previous year's sixth grade scores, but if you compare them over themselves as fifth graders, they did drop a little bit. So level 3 and 4, for sixth grade, 59% of them met that in ELA and 50% met it in math. For grade 7, in ELA, they scored about 80% in listening, 75% in reading and writing, respectively. That was a little bit of a drop over what they were doing as sixth graders. And in math, between 75 and 88. And actually, seventh grade math is the area where that's our bright shining star. They actually improved tremendously over their scores as sixth graders. And when I show you the growth numbers later on, you'll see that our seventh grade math teacher, the kids on average met 90% of their growth target, which is one of the higher numbers out there. So our seventh grade math students made a lot of growth last year. Scores were as sixth graders. You can see that overall they got about 55% for both ELA and math in levels 3 and 4. In grade 8, the students got about 83% in the listening and 62 and 67 in reading and writing, respectively, were at, near, or above. In math, it was 62 for concepts and procedures, problem solving was 69, and communicating reasoning was 76, which gave them overall, actually, they tied in ELA and math, they were both 43. The eighth graders actually dropped in both ELA and math over themselves as seventh graders. So one of the areas that we've been kind of talking about is the later middle school grades. In terms of the test scores in the later middle school grades have a tendency to decline over time, and so we're looking into why that's happening. If you compare us to the DIRG, you can see that the fifth graders are scoring well above the DIRG, the sixth graders are a little bit below, and then the seventh and the eighth graders get lower still as you go on. And in math, the fifth graders, again, are scoring higher than the DIRG. The sixth graders are below. The seventh graders bump back up again and kind of almost hit the average of the DIRG, and then it drops back down again in eighth. What's new this year is the fact that we have the growth numbers so early in the year. Last year, we didn't get the growth numbers until around the holidays. So if you look, the state and the DIRG are roughly falling somewhere between 65 and 55% of the target achieved. So what happens is when a student takes the standardized tests, based on their previous year's score, the state says they should make this much growth in 1 year. And then we get information about how much of that target they reached. And you can see that across the DIRG and the state, kids in general are getting somewhere between 5% of that target. Our fourth graders of where they were supposed to get to based on the statistical model that the state uses. The fifth graders got the 74% of the target, and this is all in ELA. The sixth graders were at 43% of the target, the seventh graders were at 48% of the target, and the eighth graders were at 31% of the target. If you flip over to math, I told you that seventh grade is going to be really high. You'll see that big 91 there. They got 91% of the target. Fourth grade got 71, fifth grade got 73, sixth got 47, and eight got 48. So fourth, fifth, and seventh more or less were scoring where kids in the Durgan Estate are or better. And 6 and 8 were a little bit below that. Any questions on the middle school? I know it's a lot of information taken in a very short period of time. Yes, AJ.
Question. So I want to reiterate, from prior meetings, like a big concern was kids transitioning from fourth grade into fifth grade, and a legitimate concern based upon data and statistics that we saw before with test numbers being lower. It seems like it's completely the opposite here. It seems like the fifth graders are scoring much higher, and there's a decline once you get into eighth grade. Could you on that a little bit?
Actually, that's pretty consistent. That the trend tends to be third, fourth, fifth are kind of like upward, and then when they get to 6, 7, and 8, it starts to come back down again. So they tend to peak at fifth and then kind of start to trail off as they go through 6, 7, and 8. And that's consistent over multiple years. I can go back to when they first started the Smarter Balance. And not every single year, but most years, that's sort of what the shape of the kind of curve looks like as they go through the grades. In terms of what is happening, there's a lot of different factors that are playing into this, including things like scheduling, staffing, and all that sort of stuff. We are trying to, part of it is curriculum, and we've been working on the curriculum. I said during my administrative report that we have some PD days at the end of the month that are going to focus on 5 through 8 ELA and 5 through 8 math, partly to start to talk about some of this stuff and to continue conversations that have happened in previous years. I think some of the ELA stuff for the middle grades might be an implementation dip because they started working on the workshop model last year, and usually when you bring in something new, you see a little bit of a dip in the scores as the teachers kind of adjust to what they're doing that's different for them. And I'm expecting that probably some of that will kind of bounce back up next year as they get more comfortable with what they're doing. In terms of math, I mean, we talked about math a lot last year. Some of it is curricular, some of it is leveling. There's a lot of different pieces to that. We start leveling the kids in math in 6th grade. That definitely does have an impact, and I think that that's part of what you're seeing in terms of the scores dropping as the levels diverge. One group is going through the honors track and they're getting content or one curriculum, same content standards, but one curriculum, and then you have this other track that is the level 2 track that is, again, covering the same standards, but the curriculum's a little bit different. And so that's what we've really been looking at with the math is what is that level 2 group doing? And how can we get them doing things that will keep them from kind of diverging from the level 1 so much? Because that's really a big piece of the difference as you go through 6, 7, and 8. They start in 5th and everybody's doing the same thing. Then we split them in 6 and you've got 2 different tracks going, and the tracks get further apart as they go on. And in 8th grade, there's a 3rd track that gets introduced. And so now you've got them split into 3 levels, and that widening of the tracks is part of what is causing the problem with the math program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got, and maybe part of what you were just saying answers this, but for the growth side of it, you mentioned that you're working on the lower tracks, trying to improve their scores. Is there any way, when you see the growth, whether you can see whether the lack of growth is in the higher tracks or the lower tracks?
The lack of growth is mostly in the lower tracks. So in looking at it, I did this for 3 years. I said, okay, where were they in 6th grade, where were they in 7th grade, and where were they in 8th grade? And I can predict with 90% accuracy what the child's Smarter Balance score is going to be in 8th grade based on what track they end up in 6th grade in.
But those growth levels in those upper tracks are doing very well.
They're doing fine. I mean, one of the things
we're only at 31%.
One of the things
growth,
with the upper tracks is that they can't grow much because they're already up at they're up close to the ceiling of the test anyway for their grade level. So the growth targets for the upper grades are actually much smaller because they can't go very far. But there is, like I said, there is a distinct difference in how students who end up in the lower level in 6th grade perform over time. And it actually even impacts them if they skip back up to the higher level later on. So if kids who are in the lower level to start but may end up in the higher level and tend to perform lower than the kids who started in the higher level in 6.
Wouldn't that be a much larger growth, though, as far as the fact that growth numbers are the worst numbers?
It doesn't show itself in their test performance. So their test performance tends to be lower than the performance of the students who went through the level 1 track to start with.
Bill?
Just got a couple questions. Initially, you talked about you see an improvement. I think it was 3rd, 4th, 5th generally.
Yeah, it generally goes up.
And then we see it kind of tailing off 6, 7, 8.
Yep.
Is that a Lebanon issue, a DERG issue, or a state issue, or all three?
I can't generalize it to that level. Have I seen other schools with the same trend? Yes, I have. Have I seen schools with the opposite trend? Yeah, I've also seen that. So I can generalize it to like everybody has the same problem. I will say that it is.
It's right here.
Yeah. The DERG and the state do tend to trend downward as they get further along in middle school. Yeah.
Well, not like that.
It's not as steep as
not
ours.
not the growth numbers, but the performance numbers tend to trend down as they go higher. If you go back to like the DERG comparisons for the actual scores, you'll see that they have a tendency to go down as the kids kind of go on. Our DERG did well in 8th grade for this year, but again, it varies from year to year in terms of which kids are involved. And when I was in Summers, it was the opposite. It was 6th grade who did the worst and 8th grade that did the best. So, you know, like it depends on the building and the district a little bit.
And so one other question. And I know you said this last year when you showed us the data. I'm a slow learner.
It's okay.
You need to have it repeated.
Like I said, it's a lot to take in one day.
Is this data, is this the benchmark or the measurement tool by which you chart your course in improving curriculum?
Not the sole one.
Okay, so then I become confused at that point. So if you have another measurement tool that says something opposite or not the same, doesn't have to be opposite, but not the same, how do you deconflict? And if this is an issue for the subcommittee, I'm fine with sitting there listening at a subcommittee. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but that confuses me.
So it depends on what each of the data points is telling me. Like they may conflict because they're looking at two different things, and so one is looking at it from one perspective and one's looking at it from a different perspective. And if they do conflict, then that means I got to go back and find more information. And sometimes that information is I go walk through classrooms and I see kind of what's going on in the classroom and see if I can get more information about what's going on. Sometimes I meet with the teachers and I say, hey, what do you guys think about what's going on here? And they'll give me more feedback about different stuff. Like, charting my course involves looking at a lot of different things. This set of test scores is one. We have other tests that we use in the district, like NWEA gets used in a lot of grade levels at the elementary school. There are other assessments that we use in pre-K and then in K through 2 that help us understand how those students are performing. And at the high school, they have other things going on other than just the SAT tests. And those help us see other pieces of it. And it's really kind of bringing it all together and deciding, like, what are we seeing over and over and over and over again? And that's usually what we focus on. It's the stuff that keeps coming up over and over and over again. Like I said, with the leveling thing, that has come up over and over and over again. And one of the ways we started to kind of move the needle on it is we have been trying to put fewer kids in level 2 and more kids in level 1 and kind of see, if you push the kids who are sort of on the cusp up, how do they do over time by being pushed up into the level 1 versus being in the level 2. And so we're playing those factors too to see whether or not we can kind of begin to address some of the issues that we're seeing.
Oh, Alexis.
Third, fourth, and fifth can be trend up, 6, 7, 8 go down. Is there a correlation between class size between the two groups?
Not tremendously. I mean, the class sizes generally tend to be somewhere between like 15 and 22 on average in all of those grades. So I mean, there's not huge, like it's not like we're dealing with class sizes of 12 in one grade level and class sizes of 24 in a different grade level. The class sizes across the elementary and the middle school, they vary a little bit, but there's not like huge discrepancies. The kindergarten classes last year were a little bit smaller. They were about 12. But the rest of the classes were, 15 to 22-ish.
So I'm going to jump in on a few of the topics that have come up from the board members. So there's going to be a class size report for the board at the October meeting. So that's a new report for this board. It's not necessarily new to school districts, but due to enrollment issues, et cetera, our board has taken an increased interest in what our actual class sizes are. So we're going to produce a class size report for you for October. Regarding, Bill, your question on is the Smarter Balanced Assessment the one that we use to drive instructional change? And the answer is, well, Kathleen said part, right? It's part of what we use. The Smarter Balanced Assessments are a final assessment. So it is the one that we are supposed to be helping our students be able to achieve well on, right? That's the summative. During the course of the school year, all the other assessment pieces that Kathleen spoke to are interim assessments. They're the ones that provide us with diagnostic data on our students so that we could, if we're using the data correctly, we could identify areas that we need to focus on for each of the students. And to go along with that, we've been working on professional development for the last couple of years on differentiating instruction because each child may have a different need, right? Or you have to have a certain need, another group of kids has this other need, and so we're trying to help teachers, and they've been receptive to it, the ability to reach the needs of the various learners within their classroom. That becomes important because, as Kathleen said, sometimes when you start differentiating students into different course levels, right, you actually grow gaps instead of close gaps. And so in our eliminating low-level classes, which has created some questioning from the teachers because they've been operating under a system where there are multiple levels, especially when you get to the high school, right? And so there has, concern has been raised because we eliminated the scholastic level classes. But the fact is the children that were in the scholastic level classes were really never being prepared to do well on any of these assessments, right? And so why maintain a child and a staff member in a curriculum that is not meeting the goals, right? And so we also found, as Kathleen mentioned, that at the middle school, when we start to differentiate for math, we begin to see gaps. And so in 6th grade, there's 2 levels. And then by the time we get to 8th grade, there's 3 levels. But instead of adding a level for our, super high-flying kids, we keep moving kids down, right? And so kids that were in level 1, some of them got differentiated into level 2, and then we added a level 3, right? Less rigor or less of the curriculum is being covered. So we're doing less with the kids who probably need the most. right? And so we've been working on correcting that because we're finding that we're not meeting the needs of our kids, right?
I do want to add a high note, though. We hit our participation targets. So this is the first time since I've been here that we've hit the participation targets. And the middle school did a great job last year getting the kids to show up and take the test. And so we made the 95% rather, participation target in all 3 buildings.
Right.
So
there was
no-
a concerted effort to communicate with parents about the tests.
Good.
And then also with the kids in the buildings.
So no participation penalty this year?
We
None.
should not see one, no. We actually made it with a few students to spare, so there
Good.
shouldn't be any
Good job.
issues. So.
Good. Dawn?
So you said that the trend for the decline in the middle school has been happening for
As long as I've been here.
So I have a 2-part question. Is there an immediate and longer term plan? I understand that there's these minor changes that are happening and playing with these ideas, which makes me as a parent kind of nervous to hear. Like, I interpret that as playing with my kids' education, which makes me very, very nervous. But I'm wondering about immediate and long-term plans to even out that. So not even like improve it on the up, but like to even out the decline. And the second part of that is, what resources are we missing that we need to implement in our classrooms in order to make that happen?
Well, we got a new resource this year in the intervention teacher here who's here 2 periods a day. And so part of one of the things we're doing is we're trying to put together a more well-integrated intervention process for the students who struggle. And she has been working with the math teachers to kind of chart out for the 2 class periods a day that she's here, like which students is she seeing. And one of the things that we discussed at the beginning of the year is her role to fill gaps that students have, or is her role to kind of follow along with classroom instruction. And the consensus of the group was that they would rather she spend her time filling gaps that students have than kind of following along with what's going on in class. She'll do some pre-teaching, but her primary responsibility is going to be doing that diagnostic piece of, if the student's really struggling in mathematics, like what is it that they're missing, and then let's spend some time really working on the missing pieces so that they'll start to catch up and be able to do more grade level math that's appropriate because they're not missing as many pieces of the lower grade level pieces. And at the middle school, I'll tell you, it's all ratios and proportions. It's fractions. Well, at 5th grade, it might be multiplication and division, but going into 6th, 7th, and 8th, it's fractionals and it's percents. That's the area that they really struggle with. And that's true everywhere I've ever been, because that's conceptually a very hard thing for kids to kind of wrap their mind around. So she's going to spend a lot of time with those kids in intervention, kind of working with that. And then to a lesser degree, there's a group of students who, when they hit the middle grades, they struggle with number sense, in the sense of answers that are realistic, and it gets into place value issues and stuff, like understanding, like from a quantity point of view, how much more is 1,000 than 100 and stuff, and having like a basic concept of what that looks like, so that when you get an answer that's like totally off the wall, you recognize that it's totally off the wall because it couldn't even be close to what you're looking for. And so there's a smaller group of kids who struggle with that, and so that's probably going to be a lot of what she's going to be doing when she works with the kids. And she's working, we've encouraged them to set it up so that it's not necessarily grade level intervention, it's concept intervention. So if a student, she's going to, because she's only here 2 periods a day, it's not like she can do, 5th grade intervention 1 period, 6th grade the next, 7th that one after that, and 8th the 4th period of the day. So what she's going to do instead is she's going to pull groups based on what concepts they're missing. And she's going to work across grade levels in terms of, okay, if you're having trouble with fractions, let's sit down and little pieces kind of moving around, because there's 4 grades and she's only here for an hour and a half, really, when it comes down to it. In terms of the curriculum piece, we're looking at the curriculum in level 2. Actually, we started that process last year, and we're still kind of in the middle of it to see what the differences between the level 2 curriculum are and the level 1 curriculum, to kind of get a sense of like where the break points are in terms of things that the level 1 kids do but the level 2 kids don't. See if we can start to incorporate more of those activities in the level 2 in a way that will allow successful with them. Because that sort of that split is part of the level 2 kids the same learning experiences that the level 1 kids are getting, and it's showing up in their test scores later on because they just didn't have the same learning opportunities.
Would the board like a sort of monthly report, since this is something that I think the board is very interested in? Would the board like the curriculum committee to report on this monthly? Maybe or bi-monthly, the progress that they're making to achieve this. Would that make sense?
I think any of these areas where we're below our DIRG numbers are of great concern to me, at least. I mean, anywhere where we're doing all right is a different story, but... Awesome. Thank you.
I didn't actually do the SATs, but they're the last page. You can look
we got them.
Yep, you can look at them.
Yep.
If you have questions, let me know.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kathleen.
All right. Financials.
So I'll jump in on the 18-19 financial. So we reported to the board at the August meeting a estimate of where the budget was going to end in terms of deficit. And then after the board meeting, I sent the members of the board an email with an updated budget document. That is the one that is in your board packet tonight. That is the one with the Board of Finance for its decision-making about allocating surplus funds at the end of the fiscal year. So we ended the year with a $69,020 deficit. Actions at its last meeting to cover our deficit. Bob, is there anything to add on that?
We'll add to that is, as you are aware, there's an annual report that is required to be submitted to the state on school expenditures. That's due September 1st. That report used to be called the EE-001. It changed last year, so now the EFS report. It's a different format. So that was completed and submitted on time, and those numbers reflect the same numbers that the superintendent did mention. There is no outstanding projects ongoing, no outstanding purchases waiting for invoices. Everything was closed out. So, as the superintendent said, it's final numbers pre-audit. There'll be no more adjusting on our part, no more invoices.
Question. So we don't really anticipate much difference when the audit is done?
No,
correct?
I do not.
Okay.
If it is, it'll be a surprise to me.
Okay, just asking. Thank you.
Right. Nothing else on that one. 1920.
1920, I thought I'd have all the final adjustments ready for this meeting, but I do not. I've gone through the certified salary accounts. We've had almost over and staff new and leaving of almost 20 people, so we've been busy putting them in the right spot. We've gone through the changes to the 430 account as a result of the MCOR contract being brought in-house. I've gone through the health insurance. I've been working with special ed and Cheryl and her assistant to go through the what the expected costs are, special ed, as well as the change in excess cost reimbursement. So we have to finalize that, and I still have the non-certified piece to go through. Overall, though, we've found no new items to be concerned about. Salaries are shaping out okay on the certified side, as is health insurance.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, to follow up before I get into my piece on that, when you make those adjustments that you're going to have for next, because you recall we presented a budget to the Board of Ed that you approved, and I believe I don't remember the exact percentage, 2 point something, and then it was reduced down to a 2% number by the Board of Finance. The original number that was approved by the board had health insurance assumptions, and I'll use, say, the reduction in force of 3 insurance number for that. We had assumed with MCOR coming in-house, there would be family coverage coming in and so on and so forth. So now we have the reality has set in where the people left, the replacements came in with different coverages. Same thing happened with facilities. So I'd like to change the insurance number, as an example, to what we think it will be. Same thing would be like with the MCOR contract. We left the 430 account, we just reduced it by $45,000. Well, now we have a salary for the director that in the budget that you approved was 0. We'd like to move the salary in there from the 430 account and adjust those accounts that we know were affected by changes that the Board of Finance and town approved action, so that when we're doing analysis going forward, the budget makes sense instead of trying to remember all the things. And I'll try to put those on either a sheet or one budget transfer request, or whatever the right terminology would be. Does that kind of answer your question? yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, for me, in my past practice, I do a budget amendment, a mid-year budget amendment.
Yeah.
Which is the bottom line stays the same. But
Bottom
the
line
lines
stays
are
the same, but we'd
adjusted.
like to put the money into the
where it actually
respective areas
belongs
where
at
it
the beginning of
belongs.
the year, so we
Yeah.
can see how it tracks through the year.
Makes sense to me.
I mean, it would make no sense to keep the budget in this, say, using the director of facilities at a 0 for the year and have his 430 account inflated.
Yeah.
You might as well move the money to where it belongs. So I still have that to do, to go through the non-certified, and we have to iron out some of the unknown or not finalized special ed costs. So that'll take up the rest of this month to do.
Okay, just a couple other things from the Finance Committee. Policy number 3451, no action on that tonight. It's still, I'll let you know if something needs to be done with that. We had a very, I think, high level but thorough training session on special ed, what goes into the special ed budget, which I thank you for, because it's all good information, and it's worthwhile to me to understand how that goes together, and I appreciate all the work you do with a lot of numbers and a lot of big numbers. So thanks for that. And the last thing we had was we're firming up our budget calendar for the year. There are some milestones that I think we definitely want to hit ahead of the Board of Finance, so that, you know, I'd like to be a step ahead of them as much as possible. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Questions? Anything in the financial report? All right. Thanks. Moving along, new business. We have first readings.
Yes, I hate first readings. What is your pleasure?
Well, we don't
One
vote
at
on
a time?
we don't vote on first readings, but you go ahead and tell us what you'd like.
We adopted all the Shipman and Goodwin. We did some discussing on several of them. Discussions on what the constable is allowed to do, and we got that all ironed out. We know that there's a document that the superintendent has that allows constables to be on school property with their weapons in special circumstances. We left the superintendent's job description in. It's really not necessary to have it. Shipman and Goodwin did not have one, but we left it in anyway. It makes a good guideline for other boards or whatever. And I know we have our own contract. The automatic defibrillators, we had gone over that a few times. But if you really look at it, there's only one page we really have to worry about, because we discovered that when there's a regulation, we do not have to really act on it. A regulation has to be followed.
Right.
And so all the other pages after the first one are all the regulations. And so those are there. And we had talked about 1005. 1005 is also a regulation. We sort of brought it up for a first reading in the past, but it does not have to be approved because it's a regulation. So here are any questions after they read them? Yes.
I mean, it's just a concern more than a question on 2003, the job description.
Yes.
I'm just worried that it superintendent's happy with the language. I mean, I'd be happy, but we wouldn't want them to conflict with each other.
Well, we have time to look at it between now and the next meeting.
30 days.
Well, and also 2003 has to be revised and voted on by the board during the time of a search. So it doesn't.
It almost seems like it doesn't need to be in policy.
Yeah, it almost seems like it doesn't have to be, but
something to think about.
Yep.
We discussed it, and Bob wasn't concerned about having it in there, and Shipman and Goodwin had nothing because they don't really need it.
Yep.
So our idea was to change the number and leave it in.
Okay.
It would also make sense to delete the one, I forget which number it is, I have it here somewhere. 2130, which is, it says that the superintendent will do job descriptions. Well, it already says that in the job description, so we don't need 2130. So we're going to be asking for that one to be just plain deleted.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Revision of the board calendar. So we know we want to up the or make earlier some of the finance items.
And Bob had passed a tonight, so I need time to digest that. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not a speed reader.
Okay, so we'll wait on that. Anybody else from their committees notice anything that's out of whack, time-wise? Yeah, Chelsea. Okay. We'll put it back on the agenda for next time. All right. On to action items. Act on letter. Yes, Sarah.
I move to make an amendment to the agenda.
Okay. She's moving to add an item to the agenda. Do I have or to suspend the rules and add an item to the agenda? Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Seconded by AJ. All those in favor of suspending the rules to add an item, raise your hand. That's unanimous. All right.
I'd like to add an action item. Action item number 14.
Okay.
And that action would be to adjust the IT part-time IT, 2 part-time IT techs to 1 full-time.
That's three. Right now we have 3 part-time, right?
We have 3 part-time, looking to restructure that department to 1 full-time, 1 part-time.
Right. So she said 2 to 1.
Right.
So we still have the
2
third.
part-time to 1 full-time, not touching the other part.
Oh, the other part. Okay, right. Okay. Well, we're just putting it on as an item right now. Do I have a second for adding that action item?
Second.
Second by AJ. All those in favor of adding the action item, raise your hand. That is unanimous. Okay, that'll be taken up as number 14. Back to number 1. Act on letters of resignation. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion, we accept the letters of resignation.
Second.
Motion by Matt, second by Bill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Move along. Act on out-of-state field trips. Moved by Sarah, second by John. Discussion?
So just for clarification, while these are in fact out-of-state field trips, they're coming to the board because there are more than one day, right? So they're overnight field trips, which triggers the board's action on these field trips.
And these are additions to the existing, already approved
The
field
already
trips?
approved list.
Yeah, right.
Any questions? Discussion? No? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving these field trips, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Action on bids for a pickup truck.
It is the subcommittee's recommendation that we bid from Columbia Ford in the amount of $30,282 with additions of backup camera, a 360 camera, and the classic service body, totaling $38,357.
That's your motion?
Yes.
And from what account?
That would be from the SIP account.
From the SIP account. So moved by AJ. Yep.
Second.
Seconded by Bill. Let's get more to get the motion.
I know, I got the 360 camera. You said, what kind of body was it, utility body?
Yep, so
Okay, I got the utility body.
the original total bid was $30,282, and the additions, the backup camera is $325, 360 camera is $350, and the classic service body is $7,400, for a total of $38,357.
To come from?
To come from SIP. Date that, I'm sorry, so that would be for the maintainer.
Okay.
Thank you, Alexis.
Okay. That's from, moved by AJ, second by Bill. Any discussion? Matt?
Just a couple questions. So, just to understand, this truck is just going to have a utility truck with a service body. It's not going to be a plow truck or anything like
Correct.
that. Okay.
At this time, yep.
Okay.
Plow ready.
Pardon?
It's plow ready, but we're not purchasing a plow
Not
or a
purchasing
sander.
a plow or
additional.
sander or
Correct.
any of that other stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and the camera and the classic service body, we wanted to add those things in for number one, safety, and as well as
No,
to be
that's
able to
fine.
transport tools back
Yeah.
and forth.
That's totally fine. I was just making sure I understood. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Action on substitute pay.
So I had given the board a little bit of a heads up at a committee meeting that due to the increase in minimum wage, we were going to have to adjust some of the salaries for our staff. And it turns out that it really is right now impacting the substitute custodian wage and substitute IA wage. And so what Bob just handed out is a schedule for increases for the minimum wage. So, and at the bottom, there is the current wage for a substitute for both the custodian IAs and the recommended new minimum wage. So we're recommending that the custodians' current wage is substitute custodians is currently $10.50 an hour, that we raise that to $11 an hour, meeting minimum wage increase that's scheduled to go into effect October 1st. For substitutes, we currently, substitute IAs, we currently pay $75 a day. They work a 7-hour day. So again, based on $11 an hour beginning October 1st, the new minimum wage for substitute IAs would be $77 a day. So right now, we're proposing that we adjust just for October 1st change. Subsequent recommendations, as you can see, the timeline accelerates for adjusting of the minimum wage. It's not an annual, it's every 11 months. So as we move through that schedule, it could be that we make a recommendation to accommodate more than one of those minimum wage hikes, because you could have more than one occurring within 1 year.
Sarah?
What is substitute teacher pay per day?
So currently, it's $85 a day, and then for a sub who's who was subbed in the district for 10 or more days, it goes up to $95.
95. Yep.
Is there a proposed increase in that as well?
There isn't at this time, no.
Matt?
Is there any estimates on the impact to the budget because of these increases?
No, I haven't done that right as of yet. I mean, substitute custodians are very difficult to get by, and it's not a ton of money. I mean, we budget for
Right.
that, and
50
I
cents
use
an hour.
$2 a day, so.
So, okay.
I mean, they don't have a choice but to
No,
at
I
least go to
understand.
those levels.
No, I understand that. I was just curious as to,
I can go back, and next meeting I can bring you what that would be, an estimate.
It wouldn't be very large.
No, I'm
it's
just
50
curious.
cents an hour for the substitute custodian, and it's $2 a day for the substitute IA.
I can do an estimate for you next month.
We still have to approve it
It's state
today,
law,
but
so we don't have too much.
you have to approve at least this amount
Yeah.
today.
right.
So.
No, I'm not, I just was curious if
Yep.
anybody was, because everything adds up.
Can we have the teacher schedule for the next meeting also? Because I think that we need to adjust, I mean, if we're adjusting these, it's not fair to not look at the other substitutes
Well,
in our district.
we-
Because they're right there too.
But adjusting them, well, not at 95, they aren't,
At 85, they're pretty close.
because it's 77 would be minimum, but yeah. But we can't, the amount that we spend on substitute teachers, it would be good to look at it, but more in during the budget cycle to schedule it for next year for the teachers. Because trying to move it mid-year without it in the budget may be tough. Because we spend a fair amount on
I
substitute
think the
teachers.
total was
right?
$165,000 budgeted, and we exceeded that by $23,000. That was for all substitutes, which included IAs as well.
Right, I'm just, my point is, we don't have to talk about it anymore tonight, but my point is, there'll be the custodians and the substitute IAs would potentially be making $105 a day, where you have substitute teachers making 85, so, in 20.
Oh, once you get up there. Oh,
Right.
yeah.
It just,
Oh, yeah.
that needs to be addressed.
It-
sooner
over
rather
the
than
years,
later.
yeah.
It would definitely need to be addressed as the minimum wage hikes go up. Definitely.
We just included that schedule so you'd be aware of what the state law is and how it does accelerate every 11 months.
Thank you.
But currently, the only one that we would actually need to approve and put in motion is the one for October 1st, correct?
That
That's
is
correct.
Okay. Well, I would like to propose a motion to move forward and accept the increase for October 1st, 2019 to be in accordance with the Department of Labor Wage and Hours Division.
I second that.
So you're doing that for both the custodians and the IAs?
Correct.
Okay.
I second it.
Moved by AJ, seconded by Matt. Discussion? Being that we don't have it in the budget, I guess I wouldn't, but I mean, $80 a day sounds a little more even, you know, $12 an hour sounds a little more reasonable, and you wouldn't have to move it again next year for the substitute custodians, but we won't have it to cut, we can't cover it if we went that direction.
But the next increase is in the next budget cycle, so.
Is in the next
Just
budget
factor it
cycle.
in the next
Yep.
budget cycle.
So we'll just have to
We'll
factor
have
it
to
in
look at
then.
that for ongoing budgets as a factor, as she pointed out, and everything else.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Second reading of policy 1002. What's your pleasure?
You know, my pleasure is that we pass it.
Okay.
You'll notice they all have the nice headers on them now. They all say Lebanon, they've got the locator. As do the first readings, except we don't have a date on the first readings. But it's in front of you. What is your pleasure?
Matt?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept all act and accept all the second readings together. Instead of going
You would
through them
like to
one by
make a
one.
motion to approve items
5, 6,
5
7,
through
8, up through 11.
5 through 11.
Second.
Moved by Matt, seconded by Sarah to accept all second readings, items 5 through 11 on our action items. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in...
Wait a minute. I just would like to point out that on 1003, the last paragraph on the first page, this may be affected when we go through the other three sections in business and students and in personnel, where there's other discrimination policies mentioned. So that this page may very well get updated again in the future.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm happy.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Moving along.
Quick question.
Yep.
Is there a plan for how to file the now, because now we have overlapping numbers. So we have these new numbers, and then we have what yeses or what was just submitted, but not all of them have changed. So is there a plan for how that's being housed? Because now we have 1008 that one committee is referring to, yet we have a new 1008. So how it will
We have
be.
a Shipman and Goodwin 1008.
Well, no, we actually
Now
have
it's
two
ours
LPS
right now, yes.
1008s. So
I'm just filing them nicely in my manual.
Yeah, so that is a new question for
it was a new question.
So we'll figure out a solution of identifying the new policy versus the old, and then eventually that will resolve itself once we get through the update of the entire policy book. So we'll have to flag it in some way.
Thank you.
And then you do have the revised dates. The other ones haven't, never mind. Figure
From
it out.
policy, so we'll have to.
Yep. Okay.
We'll look it up.
Emergency, not energy. Emergency repairs. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, then this should be emergency.
Do I have a motion on paying for the emergency repairs?
I did write them down. Now I just have to find them. I do have the numbers.
Motion
So we
to
can
approve
discuss.
Non-lapsing account for emergency repairs.
Moved by Sarah we kind of need the numbers and the projects. So we'll let AJ.
But that can come under discussions, right?
So the emergency repairs, thank you, Sarah, for making the motion. I'll just add in additional information. For the sinkhole behind the middle school, the new pipes, no, I'm giving her the actual numbers. For the new pipes and catch basins is $6,400. And at the elementary school, there are 2 booster pumps that are needed for replacement, and that cost is $14,121.
So you're moving to allocate $20,521 for emergency repairs out of non-lapsing account. Moved by Sarah, seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Revised SIP request. So this is the, just a little background. This is the SIP request that we already made with the $100,000 worth of items taken out of it that we did get allocated for this year. 100,000 was our allocation for this current year. So it's the remainder, the 138,000 that we from our original request, plus 75,000 for the oil tank that's on the sheet for the request for next year, but we're asking for it now so we can get moving on it. We're going to go back to Board of Finance today, a week from now, to give them the list in that manner and ask them to send that to a town meeting for a transfer from fund balance using basically the surplus from this year. Do I have a motion on the request?
I would like to make a motion to propose to the Board of Finance of $213,000 for additional SIP funds for the list of SIP projects and replacement of the oil tank.
Moved by AJ.
Second.
Second by Bill. Discussion? Seeing none. Raise your hand. That's unanimous. Item 14. Action on. Sarah, you said it better than I did because I was messing with one part-timer that I didn't read. Move to approve changing 2 part-time to 1 full-time IT tech. Any second?
A second.
Second by AJ. Discussion?
What's the net effect of the budget?
That's it.
I have that here if you guys want to sort of pass that around to everybody. There's actually a positive effect, not negative.
We like that.
It's a positive variance of positive variance of $958.
It's not much.
Did you factor in your increase in your hourly rate? October 1st.
That makes $50 an
That
hour.
would eliminate the
Money. It's just that the money's already there in the budget.
Hopefully retain and have continuity in that position.
Yes, so we prepared that earlier.
All right.
Second. I just want to make one comment. I went through this year of the 153 days of this year. I've only had 3 techs, 42 days. So that's why we're proposing this, to hopefully get a little bit more stability in my team. You know, I've had a lot of good people, and it seems like as soon as they get the knowledge, they're leaving. So we're hoping that you guys will take this in consideration and get to a better state.
I went back and looked at actual termination dates because we get close to the seeing, sometimes you forget about these things, and in the last 8 months, he's had 4 people leave starting in mid-January. It's like, so basically every 2 months, someone's gone.
I understand. I think we had that discussion when we were looking at the budget, saying that it's hard to keep part-timers of any kind, whether it's teachers or IT techs or whatever it is. Question, what would the net effect of this be in next year's budget, keeping the same structure?
Didn't do next year's budget because I think Jock will be presenting something different.
Yep.
Than what's
Even this
probably
structure,
two.
he'll be looking for a different
If
structure.
I go back to the 1920 budget, what the board had approved was changing from 3 part-time techs to 2 full-time techs, and that's what went into the budget.
Right.
But then when the Board of Finance and the town approved a lesser budget through administrative meetings, that was sacrificed, and we went back to the 3 part-times, and that was part of the savings to get down to that level. So I can't speak for Jacques, but I assume he's going that route
We
again.
had budgeted for 87 hours with the 3 part-time, so we're going down to 69 hours. So it's pretty easy to figure out. We're saving on the hours, but we're paying benefits. So it all depends, again, if it's a single family or a dual.
Well, yeah, of course. Yep.
So the full-time position hopefully will afford us some stability in the department. We're going to have less contact hours for the tech with staff and students, but at least we'll have the person all day long, and Jacques will work with the full-time person and the part-time person. They are prioritizing their work appropriately. So we are going to have fewer contact hours, but for now, gaining the stability in the department and not, as Jacques said, there's only been 42 days that he's actually had 3 people. So based on having only 2 people at part-time, we're actually going to gain hours in that regard. So, the benefit to the staff and students with the stability in the department is important.
How are we losing hours?
We're going from 3 we're taking, I like her, Sarah's better way, we're taking 2 part-timers at 29, which is
Oh, at
58.
29, not at 19. Okay.
58, and we're getting a 40.
Okay.
So we're actually, we are losing
18 hours.
But like I said, I've only had 42 days.
Yeah, that's on-
Where there's 3.
on
I was
paper,
thinking the
he's-
part-timers were 19.
I mean, that is a concern to me, losing hours, but.
Town
looking
side,
at
we
the
use 19
42
as the limit,
days
so.
and 109 days that I've only had to, I mean, we're actually gonna be adding hours.
Yeah, he's losing hours on paper, but in reality, he'll
Probably
gain hours.
Plus, you're having to retrain people every 2 months, correct?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
He did have an interview today with a part-timer, and I thought that I let him in the door. I thought it was a middle school student. I'm not kidding.
Doogie Howser.
He's his pool of applicants is no experience other than maybe an internship and very
It's limited.
young.
Yep.
So, we've not yet received a letter of resignation, I'm assuming, because we didn't see a letter tonight.
So it's, that's on hold pending a board's decision here, because we're going to try to retain a current employee through this action.
But through this action, would a job posting go up?
So it would go up. It would be posted internally, and we'll see if we get any applicants. But I think we will.
So, how many people, do you have 3 now or no? You have 2?
I've only got 2 right
Okay.
now. Currently only have
So,
2.
that if you go to this program and one of the 2 decides to become full-time, we're not deleting we're not saying to the 3rd person, bye-bye.
No, there is
I
no-
only have
there is
two
no-
right now.
okay.
I actually, like he said, I was interviewing today,
Right.
two people.
Okay,
I don't
no,
wanna
that's-
get into
Addition
that.
by subtraction.
No, that's fine, I understand, thank you.
So we are hoping, obviously, one of the.
Right.
One of the.
More transparency, that whole process, so. That's just-
In what way?
Well, that we didn't have a resignation, but then we were sort of changing it a little bit, so I just wish that that was direct, I suppose.
Okay, so earlier in the meeting, when I mentioned that we did have word that we'll have a resignation from another IT staff member, and that I would be asking for a motion when we got to the action items, so that we could increase or restructure the department so we would have one full-time. I didn't directly say that we would be pursuing a current staff member for that position, I guess directly, but that was what I was implying when I introduced the topic.
I just didn't see that coming, so. That's fine, I mean, obviously the person must be qualified, but I just think it does need to be posted. If we're changing the position, that's my opinion.
Any other discussion? AJ?
I'm just curious. I'm in favor of it, obviously. What is the contractual obligations currently? That would be the caveat, I think. So in terms of due process with having to post positions, regardless of, whatever is associated with it, what is currently in the contract when you post positions?
So this is a non-union position. This is an at-will employee. Not post at all and just offer a full-time position to a current employee.
That's where I was
Right?
going
So
with it.
there really isn't a need, but if the board would like us to post a position, then we would do it internally.
I believe it 2 years ago during the budget process, it was done with a teaching position in the elementary school. It went from half-time to full-time, and it was the same person.
Pia Perry,
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. That's Sarah, John, Alexis, Maureen, AJ, and Matt. Those opposed? Bill? Abstentions? Dawn?
Thank you.
All right, so motion passes. Thank you. All right, any other items? It is a regular meeting, so things can be added. Anything else? Seeing none, I'll add something, but not really an adding of an action item, just a quick discussion. Alexis and I are both missing for the October regular meeting.
As will I.
As will Matt. How does everybody feel about putting a special later? Everybody want to? Would we be looking to cancel the regular and just do the special? I didn't realize 3 of us were going to be missing. That's even more of a reason to cancel the regular, but you still have 6, so you can do it.
Say we just have a special meeting, if we can find a day in our calendar.
Right, well, that's, we have so many meetings, so to have 2 in October after all the other ones that we have.
Fine with that.
Any other thoughts?
Just to make sure there's no conflicts in dates, that's all.
Indifferent? Any thoughts?
My calendar is
Indifferent.
pretty full, so.
Right. Okay, well, we'll work on it then. All right. Seeing no other items?
So I'll have, it sounds like the board is wanting to cancel the October meeting.
Possibly,
And
yep.
then, possibly? No, I thought
Yep.
that the board was wanting to. And cancel.
It's possible, yep. If we can find a special
Possible.
meeting, that'll work.
All right, so
Yes.
I'm misunderstanding.
So-
Hold that off.
Okay.
Hold off on
Table.
cancel.
Hold- Other items on the agenda, we'll adjourn at 9:50.
Is that correct?
All right.
Yep.
You
Close
didn't do
enough.
it by yourself, Paul. You're supposed to write it.
I know, I usually do.
Everybody's
Myself
flying
on-
at half mast over here.